I really need to start remembering the fact that I changed the countdown to 10 minutes as opposed to 7. I still can't remember why I did that. I think it was just the other night. Like, kind of thought that I'd be a little bit longer getting ready. I think it was I'd come home from work or something like that, and I was in a rush, so I increased the countdown back to 10 minutes. And I've just completely forgotten to change it back since. But, you know, what can you do? Someone will have to remind me to change it back. But guys, welcome on in. Mr. Moore, Emily, how's it going, guys? Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have episode 5 of the FTG podcast. We have finally come up with a name. Bit of a backstory behind that one. It's a work thing. So we've got this saying, whenever we all start getting stressed at work, one of us will just randomly shout, "Fuck this, gaff!" And I was speaking to one of the lads at work about the podcast. He asked if I came up with a name. I said no. So he said, "What about the Fuck This Gaff podcast?" I said, "Well, I can't do that because, you know, I'm not allowed to have swearing in my title." So he says, "Well, what about FTG then?" And I just thought, yeah, it's as good a name as any. But speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is episode 5, and I am delighted to be joined with one of my, I'd say, closest Twitch friends, but also one of my closest friends, full stop. Now, guys, we're going to have to be gentle because she's apparently really nervous. I don't know why. Like, why anybody would get nervous about sitting here talking to me is completely beyond me. But, ladies and gentlemen, can we all get a very warm welcome for the gorgeous Geordie? It's Ambear92.
Hi. I'm so awkward. I'm so sorry.
Oh, mate, you're going to be sat here talking to me. You can't get any more awkward. And it's probably not a good idea for you to be saying that you feel awkward, because now I'm just going to make you feel so awkward that it's unreal. I mean, you know me.
Yeah.
How's it going, Amber? You well?
Yes, I'm not too bad. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. Been
Good.
little bit tired, to be fair. Same old, not sleeping, all that kind of shit, but you know how it is.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll get that sorted.
Well, I've had 32 years of not doing, so I'm not going to be counting any chickens anytime soon.
Yeah. I'm sure you will. You just got to find the right fix.
Ah, that's true. But we can't talk about things like that, because apparently I'll get banned.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah, that probably won't have been the best of ideas. Oh, and right on cue, Aaron wakes up. He's literally been laid there for the last hour and a half, snoring his head off.
Oh, bless him.
I even cut the boy's teeth, which he's now sat there scranning away on.
Yeah. Oh, what did you make him?
Oh, we just had fried chicken and pizza. Just
Fair enough.
lazy afternoon. We both went
Yeah.
for a couple of jars earlier.
Oh, okay.
Just something that you can just bang in the oven. Nice and simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that don't know, myself and Amber, we've known each other, what? It's got to be coming up 3 years now, hasn't it?
Yeah, pandemic, 2020. I started in March, and I don't think it was that long after that
Yeah,
that we fell into each other's lives.
Yeah, well, I think you started in the March. I'm sure I started in April.
Did you start after me?
Yeah, because
Or did I start in May? It was one of the M's. I never remember which one it was.
Well,
Did I? Because my granddad died in April, and I don't seem to remember that being like a factor. Yeah, I feel like it must have been May, because I feel like that would have stopped me from streaming. But I don't know. I don't know. We'll say it was May.
Well, I was going to say, I thought I'm pretty sure I started just before you did.
Yeah, I feel like that's right.
Right, and it was very early doors into me starting on Switch that you and I met. Now, guys, if you ask me, I say that we met through Why You Bite Me. If you ask Amber, then she'll be wrong because she's convinced
Golden
that it
Venom.
wasn't.
I'm sure it was Golden Venom.
Well, I mean, I have no idea who that is, so
I've not seen them. I think they may have stopped because I've not seen them online for probably since about 2020.
right, okay. Um, but yeah, so we met through whoever it was, right? We'll say
Someone.
whoever it was. Got chatting away. I was waffling shite about Resident Evil. Amber was waffling shite about Resident Evil. And I'm fairly sure. I know we both followed each other through that stream.
Yeah.
And I think it was a couple of days afterwards, and you were playing. I want to say you were playing Resident Evil 1 remake.
It would have been, yeah. That's all I played to start with.
Aye, and I remember coming in, chatting away with you. I'm pretty sure I ended up pissing myself laughing about 3 or 4 times. And then, lo and behold, 3 years on, how the fuck you've put up with me for so long, I have no idea.
Yeah. That's a question only God can answer.
Well, let's ask him. Liam, how does she put up with you? So, I suppose the first question that I've got for you, which is like the generic, I always ask everybody that comes on. What was it that brought you to Twitch in the first place?
So I grew up watching my dad play Resident Evil, and until I moved to London, he always set this rule that any new Resident Evil game that came out, he had to play it first. He didn't have to complete it. He just had to play it for like 5 minutes, and then I was allowed to play it after. But I grew up like the 90s watching him play Resident Evil. So I've grown up enjoying watching people play games, particularly Resident Evil. Obviously, it was like Half-Life and all of that kind of stuff as well, but particularly Resident Evil. And it was during the pandemic, lockdown, and everything. And I've just checked on my phone, and it was May when I started. And there was, I just was like, I just want to watch someone play Resident Evil. So I think I like went on to Google and just typed in "watch someone play Resident Evil," and then that's when Twitch came about because I didn't really know about Twitch. And there was a girl called Mew, who sadly actually hasn't streamed for like the past 8 months or something, but she was playing it and she was dreadful at it. And that's how I met a few of my other friends through her as well, through her streams. But just watching her, like I really enjoyed it. And she kept playing it over and over and over again. Because I think the first time she played HD Remaster, it took her like 48 hours to complete.
Wow.
It was like in an insanely long time. And she was like, Amber, like, you're really good at knowing the game. Like, why don't you give it a go? And I was like, okay. And I did, and that's why I am here now. That's how it all started.
Well, see, for me, I mean, obviously, I know that you know this story anyway. But for me, it was just simply, working through lockdown, coming home, living on my own, completely bored. And it wasn't too long after Resident Evil 3 remake had come out. I think it had been out for about a month or two. And as again, as you know yourself, that's a game that I really took to really quickly. And at the time, I don't think I'd got the platinum, but I wasn't too far off. And just this one particular afternoon, I came home from work. I think I came home about 2:00, something like that, and just decided to, let's see what the share button does. My first one was on YouTube. And I think what I did a couple of streams on YouTube, just playing through RE3R, and I was just going through each difficulty, and then that's when my sister told me about Twitch, and at the time it wasn't something that I was particularly looking to do, but I just thought, yeah, sod it, why not? And now I can't pull myself away.
Yeah.
I've now been sucked into the platform that is Twitch.
Yeah. It's a great platform, though, to be fair.
It is, to be fair. I mean, as you know yourself, you can end up meeting some very, very good people. You end up forming some fantastic connections. So hence you and I.
Yeah.
You get meeting people, get playing games, all that kind of jazz.
Yeah.
So
well, that's watching how I ended up falling into sort of Matt's community was obviously, as you're aware, Code Veronica is my favorite game. And I just fancied watching someone play Code Veronica, so I looked it up, and he was, and that's where I fell into there. I think it was Rhonda gifted me a sub because everyone was like, "Oh, escape whilst you've got the chance." And I think it was her that gifted me the sub, and Matt was like, "That's it, you're stuck now." And obviously, it's been over 2 years, and I'm still very much there. And same with Soul Signal, he was playing Code Veronica, and I just fancied watching someone playing it, and he was, and that's how I fell into his community as well.
It's funny that you mentioned Matt, actually, because obviously Matt is somebody else who I'm very close to on the platform.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of meeting the man in person a couple of times. Still not forgiving him for getting Isaac to call me
Isaac. I knew you were going to say.
Well, obviously the PC that I've now got was Matt's old PC.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I actually remember I met Matt through you.
Because I think I raided him, didn't I?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I can't remember what it was that you were streaming now, but then you raided Matt afterwards. I think it was something along the lines that he made a dick joke or something like that, which then I joined him with. I mean, it's Matt we're talking about. That's a safe bet. But he made a dick joke. I joined in with it. And again, it's the same as what it was with you. Just couldn't get away. Got like you say, got sucked into it.
And he's got a great community, to be fair. It's a good community to be a part of, I think. Definitely.
Yeah, he does. And you know what, to be fair to the lad, like, I remember the first time that you raided him, back when we'd not long met and we'd be sitting watching Matt. I remember, being sat there when he had like an average of about 20 people. Give or take between 20 or 25. And look at the guy now. He's full time, he's getting a couple of 100 people watching him. Why? I have no idea.
They all got sucked in as well.
So he'll tell you himself, I've always got to give Matt a backhanded compliment. If I say something nice about him, I have to say something bad following it. But what was when you first joined Twitch? I mean, I know the first one that I saw you play was Resident Evil 1 remake. What was the first game that you ever actually streamed on Twitch?
It was HD Remaster. Because I was so scared, because I knew that game well, and I was so scared because it's a big thing putting yourself out there. I did. She says that she has an acting degree, but it's I was put myself out in this new platform that I wasn't that well, familiar with, is what I'm trying to say. I wasn't that familiar with it, so I didn't know if I was going to have people come in and just be like, "You're really shit, like, what are you doing on here? Oh, stupid girl gamer," and blah blah blah. And I've never had a bad experience. Obviously we all have had a couple of trolls, but even the trolls I've had, I've been really lucky that they've never been particularly vicious. Kind of just backhanded comments, and if they give me a backhanded comment, I just kind of will just go on someone else's stream. Like if you're not enjoying my stream, or if you don't enjoy the way I'm playing this game in particular, go and watch someone else.
No.
I'm not I'm not bothered, kind of thing. So I've been looking in that, but I was so worried because it was so new that I didn't want to mess up. I was really scared to mess up, and during lockdown, that was all I had. We were allowed outside for an hour, and we weren't allowed to see anybody else. my grand, very sadly, was grieving my granddad, and I couldn't go and see her. I was up north where all my friends and family are, and I couldn't go and see any of them. So I had nothing. My only outlet was social, like a lot of people, was social media. So I was so scared to mess that up. And because I'd made friends at this point, it was only a Muse community, I was scared that they were going to hear my voice and go, she sounds common as mug. I want nothing to do with her. She's not as entertaining, blah, 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 blah. You know, we all care what other people think, even if we try and deny that. So I think I was just scared to mess up. So I thought, I know this game. People can't like go, you're doing it wrong. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. Because I knew what I was doing. So I think that's why it took me so long to play anything else. So to answer your question, going around the houses to get there, it was actually remaster.
Yeah, and see, I remember sort of having that, I'm going to say anxiety when I first started playing, which is, I suppose you could say a little bit daft, because again, like yourself, you know, without sort of blowing my own trumpet, I know that I've always been good at Resident Evil games. I mean,
yeah,
I've been playing them since I was like 7 or 8 years old. Similar to yourself, I got into Resident Evil because I remember watching my dad play it an awful lot. The one that I saw him play the most was Resident Evil 3. And
okay.
It's quite funny because I remember when it had not long come out, and it must have took him 4, maybe 5 days to finish the game or something like that, which is rather funny now, because I think, looking back, if I spend if I was to load up Resident Evil 3 now and spend that amount of time on it, then like God only knows how many times I'd finish it.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
But to be fair to him, like not very often, because he's not really into games anymore, but once or twice, you know, my dad will pop in and he'll come and have a watch. And he's watched me play Resident Evil 3. And I remember I was in the pub with him, what's say about a month or 2 ago, and he stood there, he's got a beer in his hand, and he says, you know, the other night when you were playing Resident Evil 3? He says, yeah. He says, it only took you about 50 minutes to beat it, didn't it? I said, oh yeah, it did, yeah. How? Well, I just learnt the game, Dad, you know. Loads and loads of practice.
An insane amount of practice, to be fair.
Well, yeah, I would not like to think how many hours I put into that game now.
Yeah.
Speaking of speedrunning, I mean, I know you don't necessarily speedrun yourself, but like the people that you watch, you know, obviously myself, Matt, Holy Soul, us that speedrun very often. Me personally, I would classify you as part of the speedrunning community.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'm not sure if this is something that you've heard of. I mean, it only happened really recently, but there's been something come to light on Resident Evil 4. Now,
oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, I think you probably know where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
So, what they've now done, for those of you that don't know, for whatever reason, they've decided to put a time limit on submissions. So if your time's not like within a certain amount of time, then it gets automatically rejected for whatever reason. What are your views on that? Because me personally, I just, especially with the remake right around the corner, I don't see where it makes any sense.
No, I completely agree with you. I think it's I don't want to speak too harshly, but I think it's laziness. If you like, it's all like Matt put this really well the other day, and I'm not going to put it very well at all. But it's not about, obviously, it's about going fast, hence why it's called speedrun. But it's, you know, you and Emily, in particular, when you first started doing Resident Evil 2 remake, the excitement you would get by getting a PB and making your way up there, and you are obviously both well aware you didn't get world record, but like just knowing how excited you were getting further and further up and getting those PBs, and even if the PBs didn't change your position on the leaderboard, just seeing how happy you were getting those PBs is like such a lovely thing to see. And I don't watch. I mean, obviously, there's like Lucy Lover or Holly who do go for world records, but I don't watch speedrunners because I think they're going to get a world record. I hope they do, obviously. I watch it because I enjoy people, like the excitement and the thrill, and sadly sometimes the disappointment if particularly Nemesis memes you in some kind of way, and it's just like the excitement of like people in chat like hyping you all up, like, come on, you can do it, like, oh my god, you got gold or whatever. That's what's enjoyable to me personally. Obviously seeing people get PBs and getting people gold splits and world records and whatever is obviously really enjoyable as well, but it's seeing people achieve something, and whether it's a second faster PB or whatever, that's what's enjoyable to me. And I think it's insanely lazy for them just to go, do you know what, we can't be bothered to watch it. It's a long game. We can't be bothered anymore. If you don't do it with, what was it, under 2 hours, we're not going to bother watching it, kind of thing. And I just, yeah, I don't know. I think it's laziness.
Yeah, I mean,
if I'm being honest,
I
think it's laziness.
I'm not sure exactly what the time limit is because I've not looked. I mean, 4's probably one of the only ones that I've not actually speedrun.
I mean, it's a very long game, and that's the other thing is, you know, Nemesis, RE1 and 2 OG, or the remakes, you can get them done within an hour, less than an hour, 50 minutes, less than that. You know, you 45 minutes, or was it 46 minutes the other day you got a Nemesis? Like, they're like, so someone, on top of that, someone's put in all the effort to spend however many hours on one game to get towards the end for it to mess up and have to start again. Like, if you watch Soul Signal, he's doing no damage on RE4 at the minute. He'll get towards the end and then he'll get whacked, so he has to start again. And I know it's not quite the same with speedrunner, but something obviously can go wrong with RNG or whatever, and that means you've just spent 2 hours 10 minutes playing this game for something to go wrong, for it to completely throw your PB out the window, so now you have to start again. And I just think the effort these people are putting in, like, yeah, I don't know, I'm rambling, but yeah, I just don't like. Yeah, I don't like that rule. I know they've retracted it now, but I didn't think it was a very good idea, and I think the backlash was very warranted by people, I think, personally.
Yeah, I believe so as well, because I mean, that to some people could be a very big deterrent from running the game in the first place. And do you know what, you brought somebody up before who was probably the perfect person for you to bring up, was when you mentioned about Emily, when her and I were doing Resident Evil 2 remake. And for the
seeing used to, like, obviously you weren't like ever aggressive, but like battling with each other to, like, oh, Liam's beat me, so I'm gonna go back on there and beat him, and then Emily's beat me, so I'm gonna go back, like that friendly battle. You were like, you were 30 something, I think, at the time, but you had that like friendly battle with each other, and like that brought entertainment, because obviously watching you both and adoring you both, you know, I want you both to do well, and just seeing you like battle like that was enjoyment as well. Like,
well, I think at the time, if memory serves, I think I was just inside the top 40 and Emily was just outside the top 30, and like you say, that competition that we had at one point, like you say, you know, she'd get a PB, so I'd be like, right, well, I've got to go back to it now, because I've got to go
yeah,
which I'd then get a PB that she then had to beat. And I think the highest we both ever got to, we was both in the top 20 in the world at one point. I think I got to 18th, she got to like 15th or something like that. But then looking back at that, because obviously we'd get a PB, so we'd clip it and we'd submit it so that it went onto the boards. Now, if there was a rule, say for example that the run had to be less than 50 minutes, which it took us both, I'm going to say a couple of months to get less than 50 minutes on that run. had there have been a rule where it has to be within 50 minutes for you to submit, would we have grinded the game like we did? Now, obviously, I can't speak for Emily. Myself personally, probably not. I'd have probably gone to a different run that I knew a bit better, say the likes of Code Veronica or one of the OG games. But yeah, like you say, one of the things that I love about watching speedrunners is, like you say, that whole that euphoria, that excitement when you get that PB, and you've seen me celebrate some PBs, like how my throat has not exploded when I've been celebrating them. I have no idea.
Your mic always like mutes itself, like the decibels are so high that you're like on, you can't hear you because the mic's just like nope.
Well, you should probably all count your lucky stars that it does that, to be fair. I bet my neighbours hate me. Now, I'm pretty sure, in fact, it's not even the fact that I'm pretty sure, I am sure that I know how you're going to answer this next question.
Okay.
So I'm then going to ask you to explain why. Out of the entire series,
yeah,
which Resident Evil game is your favourite?
Code Veronica. The reason why, I think it's the story. I think, and I know I'm probably going to get some hate for loving Steve, but I love Steve with all my heart. And I think he adds a lot to that game because people forget he's 17 years old. And, his dad made some horrendous mistakes, which led to them being thrown in prison, his mom dying, and he's like trying to come to terms with all of this. And then suddenly he's in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, and then he's met Claire, who he falls very head over heels with. Yes, maybe he's a little bit creepy to her, but he falls head over heels in her, and he wants to save her, and he wants to save the world, and he just wants to. He's a young kid, and he just wants to save everybody and save the girl that he's fallen in love with. And I think I don't particularly like the Chris aspect of it, because I always remember Rebel when we were on about CVX, and he said I can't remember what it was, but he basically pointed out to me that it ends up being Chris as the hero in it. And that was when I realized that was the case, because it's obviously him who kills Alexia at the end. Claire is told, go to the plane kind of thing. I'm going to do it. And even though it's been Claire the entire time, Chris comes along and saves the day. And that's probably the aspect I don't like about it. But I think overall, I think it's the story. I think it's how long the game is. I think it's the fact, am I right in saying that that's the first game where there's a lot of different areas? Because one, obviously, it's just a mansion. Two, it's RPD. Three, I guess it's kind of the town and whatnot. But I feel like Code Veronica was the first one where you've got the prison, you've got the palace, you've got the training facility, you've got the underground, then you've got Antarctica, then you've got a mansion as well. So I think I like how long it ends up being and just the story in general. And I think that was when, and I'm not going to lie, I did fancy Steve when I was younger, when I watched my dad, and I remember sobbing when he, spoiler alert, when he dies, I remember sobbing my heart out. I was devastated. And I think that was when I really connected with Resident Evil. And I've loved it ever since. No game has come close. It's my favorite game ever, not just in the series, my favorite game ever. And no other game has ever given me the feelings that game did. And whether it was not because I was a young teenager and, hormones or whatever made me fancy Steve, and that's what connected me emotionally with it. But I think because it made me feel so much for these characters. And like I said, I was devastated when Steve died. I think that emotional connection's never been met with another game before. So I think that's probably why it's my favourite.
Yeah, and do you know
I
what? Like,
absolutely want a remake.
and do you know what? As you well know, right? As somebody that takes the piss out of Steve, like I get
Yeah.
what you mean. You know, he's a very young, you could say, misunderstood kind of character. And it's not the first death that we've seen in Resident Evil, because obviously you have Barry in RE1, depending on
Yeah.
what ending you go for. You've got Ada in RE2. I do think that the way the whole cutscene with Steve, and obviously he mutates, and then he sort of gets it almost under control, and then he turns back into his human form, and he dies in Claire's arms. For me, without any shadow of a doubt, that's probably the most emotional Resident Evil cutscene, probably out of any of the games. I'd maybe say, with the exception of the ending of Village, because that
Oh
really
god,
hit me.
yeah, I subbed at that as well.
That hit me right in the feels. And I remember
Yeah.
Matt got early access, and he brought in a couple of extra mods. He asked a couple of people that he trusts, for some reason me being one of them. Look, do you mind coming in modding while I do Village, because you know what it's like. It's early access. There's going to be trolls. There's going to be people trying to spoil it. Blah blah blah. And I remember watching the ending of Village for the first time, and I'm not going to lie. I sat there. I teared up a bit, and I think what I enjoyed the most about the ending of Village was it really brought the character of Ethan into life. Because, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I remember playing through 7, and I thought, who the fuck is this guy? He's boring the shit out of me. Like,
See, I loved Ethan even in 7.
I don't know what it was. He just seemed. Maybe it was an unfair comparison, but when you used to the likes of Leon Kennedy or Chris Redfield and protagonists like that, and then you get this. I mean, and I suppose this is what made Ethan the character that he was, but this just bog standard bloke. Because I mean, I don't know an awful lot of the lore behind 7 or Village, but as far as I understand it, like, especially in 7, like, he wasn't from any particular background. He didn't have any police training, any military training, anything like that. He was just a bloke searching for his missus, and
Yeah.
unfortunately for him, ends up meeting the Bakers, which
Yeah.
we all know how that turned out.
Yeah.
Welcome to the family, son.
No, I really like Ethan. I know there is a lot of people that don't like him, but I think it's the whole him doing literally anything for his wife and to get his wife back, and then obviously in Village his daughter, as well as he actually thinks Mia's dead. Spoiler alert, sorry. But he obviously believes that Mia is no longer around, kind of thing. But he then would do anything. Obviously I don't have children, but I know obviously you do. Parents will go to the end of the earth for their children.
Oh, 100%.
So I think just seeing him in both of those scenarios and just seeing he's just a good guy. I think Ethan's just a good guy is the best way to describe him. Because he will literally do anything to get Mia back and anything to get Rose back. And I think that's why I ultimately like him. It's because he's just a hero. He is just a regular guy. He's just a regular guy. Like you say, I don't know of any law where he has any particular... Obviously, in the second one, he's on about... he's training with Chris and stuff, but when it comes to 7, I think he is just a guy who's found himself in a horrendous situation. But yeah, I like Ethan, and I do like both 7 and Village. I don't like them as Resident Evil games, but as games, I do like both 7 and Village, and I sobbed at because I avoided Matt's channel. I popped in for a little bit, just like to say hi, good luck, blah blah blah, whatever. And then I remember I just sat and I didn't even stream it. I just played it by myself, and I finished, and I was just sat there on the end of my sofa, and I just sobbed. Like, I was devastated.
Yeah, it was a very It's a very emotional ending, but and I sort of agree with what you're saying there about not liking 7 and 8 as Resident Evil games. Not necessarily not as Resident Evil games, but it's just more, obviously it's different to the Resident Evil that you and I grew up with. Like, it's a
Yeah.
complete new take on the whole aspect. I mean, what I did like about 7 was the fact that it took it back to its original roots. It went back to being scary, because
Yeah.
I remember playing through 4, which is obviously where the series went more in the direction of action. I remember playing through 5, and don't get me wrong, I love Resident Evil 5. It's one of
I
my
do as well.
favourites. 6, well, we don't talk about Resident Evil 6.
Although someone
fair,
yesterday told me that their favourites were 5 and 6. I think it was Cosmo said, and I was like, "You're the first person I noticed." First of all, said they enjoy 6, but secondly, it's it's someone's favourite.
No. Well,
But I've only ever played it once, to be fair.
To be fair, with 6, it can be enjoyable if you play it co-op. Myself personally, I can't stand playing it on my own. I just can't do 6 on my own. I have to be playing with somebody. But let's be honest, 6 was just completely action. There was no.
I mean, Chris's was literally like playing Call of Duty.
Yeah, Call of Duty Evil.
Yeah.
And then you come to 7, which completely threw the dynamic back to horror. Now, I remember playing through 7 the first time, and originally I thought it felt more like Silent Hill than Resident Evil.
Completely agree with that.
And I'll be honest, the first time I played through it, I think I got to about halfway through the bakehouse, and I just didn't like it. I still to this day can't think why, but I just didn't like the game. And then I went back to it a couple of years later, and I think what I did was, instead of looking at it as a Resident Evil game, I looked at it as a game in its own right. And when I did that, I found it was a lot more enjoyable than the first time playing through it.
Yeah, I think you have to. Oh, I know I have to put aside my qualms of Resident Evil no longer being you're in a mansion or in a particular area and you're being chased by zombies, and they're just slow zombies at that, and you'll get Mr. X or Nemesis or whatever. I think I struggle with that aspect, that it's now more action, because like there's not a zombie in 7 or 8, and I think that's where I go, I like them as games but not Resident Evil games, because to me Resident Evil is being chased by zombies, so I need to like grow up and put that to one side and just accept that, Soul, again, going back to Soul Signal, he was on about at one point, because either I said it or someone else said it in his chat, and he just said, but that's what viruses do. They develop, they mutate, like the flu. The reason everyone gets a flu jab is because it mutates every year. That's what viruses do. They mutate, they change to become stronger and whatnot. So basically, you've just got to get with the times, is what he was basically what he was saying, and that's something I definitely need to do more of. Yeah, I don't know. I want to play 6 again, because I actually have only played it once, because I didn't enjoy it very much, but I do enjoy 5.
Well,
which is weird, given that I don't enjoy 4 that much.
Well, see, that takes me back, because I'm pretty sure my first ever co-op stream was RE5 with yourself, like way back when. Because obviously we had that spell, didn't we? We decided
where we were doing the platinum. I know Final, who I've just seen, hi Final, I just seen him pop up in the chat. I know I've played Fortnite with Final, Eagle Heart, and Emily before. But I think otherwise, I think the only person I've ever co-op streamed with is you. And that's been Resident Evil 5 and then the DLCs. This
Oh
is
yeah,
where
I
someone
forgot.
tells me,
Yeah,
actually,
I forgot we did the DLCs. Oh, we've actually got our first question. So
oh,
Longthorn asks, do you guys feel it's the same with RE3R? Whereas it's a good game if you take the Resident Evil tag away. Right, I've got a lot to say on this, so I'm going to let you go first.
I see it as a Resident Evil game. I know that people have, and understandable the issues people have with them, such as them taking the clock tower and everything out of it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, I've actually never played it once, and that was really recently. And I thoroughly enjoyed it personally. I see it as a Resident Evil game.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I get I get what people mean about this cut content, there's things
It was
that
a full price game.
I get what people say. There's things that weren't in the remake that were cut from the original, and things like that. Now, one of the things that really gets me about that is everybody talks about the cut content or the things that were missing from 3 remake, and very few people talk about what was missing from 2 remake. Now, all right, the first scenario, you do the first run or the A run if you play in the original, and it does very much stand up to the original game. I'll give it that. With the second run or the B run, there's only 1 or 2 things different from the A run. Whereas if you play the original, A and B, they're almost 2 completely separate games. Like the whole run is entirely different. Whereas in the remake, I think there's one section that's a little bit shorter. Now, yeah, okay, could they have done more with 3 remake? Absolutely, and nobody can deny that. But I don't believe that 3 remake deserves the hate that it gets. I think,
Yeah.
again, like we said earlier, if you just look at it as a game in its own right and you don't compare it to the original, I think 3 remake is an absolutely fantastic game.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Not only because I spent so many bloody hours on it.
Yeah. That's probably your most streamed game, I'd have said. That and Code Veronica.
Yeah, do you know what? That's not a bad shout. 'Cause I remember, obviously, I had the spell where I was doing Claire B on number 2. And then I got frustrated because Emily got to a point where I couldn't reach her, so I thought, right, balls to this, I'm going on to something different. and I picked up number 3. I can't remember if I platinumed it before I platinumed 2 or not. That's going to bug me now, that. I'll have to fire up the PlayStation and find out. But obviously I started to learn the speedrun for that one. I can't remember where I got to. I remember, obviously you'll remember this, I was grinding for sub 50 for what felt like the longest time. I want to say for about 3 months, 4 months, something like that. And I kept getting close, but not quite close enough. I think on console, I think the best I got was something like 50 minutes and 15 seconds or something like that. And then I put it down. I remember what I went over to. It was probably Code Veronica. A safer shout.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, went over to Code Veronica. And then obviously got the PC, so decided to have another crack at it. Oh, alright, it's easier to run on PC because of the frame difference. Put it on 60 frames. I think the first one I got just over 50 minutes. I think I got a 49.15, something like that.
Yeah.
I managed to get that sub 50 anyway. Now, one that's it's already been brought up in chat, so now I'm going to bring it up myself. Code Veronica Remake. Do you think we're going to get it? And if so, when do you think we're going to get it?
I think if they don't do it next after RE4, I don't think we'll get it. because I wonder if it's a. We know how successful RE4 is because they've released it 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways, and it always sells. Yeah. And I'm not convinced they feel Code Veronica will do the same. I think us as a Twitch and Resident Evil community believe it will. But where ultimately, as much as we're a huge community, Twitch, as in Twitch, I don't think in comparison to everybody else we're that big, if that makes sense. Yeah, like we're a small portion of the Resident Evil community as a whole, and I don't know if there's that much of a demand from other people. So I think after 4, if the next game, unless they do RE1 again, in which case CVX after that. But I think if it's not next or within the next 2 games that they announce, remake-wise anyway, I don't think we'll get it.
If you'd have asked me a month or 2 ago, I'd have been inclined to agree with you, because I'd have said, I think if we were going to get a Code Veronica remake, then it would have already been announced. Now, what's making me now think twice is there was a group of fans of Resident Evil that were into game code and game design and whatnot. They were making their own version of a Code Veronica remake. I think they originally released it, I want to say close to about a year or so ago now, but it was only like a small portion of the game. I think it was the prison section and then a couple of bits after. Capcom have recently issued a cease and desist order. So they've
Oh, I didn't realise they went that far with it. I knew it had been canned, but I didn't realise they'd got that far with it.
Yeah, well...
Oh, they'd gone that far, sorry.
That's why it got scrapped, was because Capcom issued a cease and desist. Now, the last time Capcom issued a cease and desist was when people were trying to make their own version of Resident Evil 2. 12 months later, Resident Evil 2 remake drops. So
you're gonna get me excited.
I don't know if this is me thinking logically or me thinking hopefully. Personally, I do believe that we'll get it. I think the next one is going to be some form of Resident Evil 9. I think the next Resident Evil game is going to be like the next one in the story. And then we'll get the next remake. Now, if it's not Code Veronica, then, personally speaking, the only one that I can imagine would be Outbreak, because
I was thinking
whether they'll do...
or a game similar to Outbreak.
I think originally that's what Resistance was supposed to be, and we all know what happened with Resistance. Resistance failed, and it failed hard. I think it was Gaiden. Bloody hell, long phone. Come on, behave. I think it was the flavour of the month for about a week, and then very few people touched it after that. With OG CVX initially being Dreamcast, resulting in poor sales, if they do it for PC and PS5, surely sales would be higher. Or do you think the audience isn't as big as RE2, for example? That's a very good question, actually, because that's a good point. Now,
I remember having it on Dreamcast and having to put the second disc in.
Well, speaking of which, I'm not going to be able to find it now, am I? I got sent... Can't get in with bloody drawers. Oh, no, that's not it.
Keeping us in anticipation.
The Japanese Dreamcast version.
So, you got the stream slightly delayed for me, so I can't say it right now. But you got the you got a Japanese Dreamcast version of CVX.
I have. Now all I need is a Japanese Dreamcast. and then I can start to speedrun Code Veronica, but do it from original hardware.
What's really nice is I know I still have the Dreamcast and CVX at my dad's house. However, my cousin said, "What did CVX come out in 2000 or 2001?"
2000.
So my cousin Neve, she was born in 2000, and my mum was her child carer. I don't know, when our mum and dad were at work, my mum looked after her basically, and she picked up disc, I'm going to say 2, and with her little teeth, and scratched the disc, so it was no longer playable after a certain point in the game. And there's just, I'll try and find it when I go back up north, and there's just these 2 tiny little teeth marks. So that's not playable anymore, unfortunately. One of the discs is, whichever one she didn't buy, is still playable, and the other one is playable to a certain point. But yeah, Emily, she destroyed my favorite game. But that, obviously, that would be worth a fortune. Now I imagine, as all of them are, I guess.
You see what's...
And I would love to be able to get that experience of playing it on the Dreamcast again and having to swap over the discs. And it's just crazy that discs couldn't hold that much data. So they literally, I mean, Final Fantasy VII was what, 9 discs or something. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy how, like, in our lifetimes, how much, like, the gaming world's developed. Like, you can literally just download games now.
Yeah.
That was never a thing. You had to buy the disc. Like, yeah, it's just crazy.
You couldn't go online to find out what you had to do. You had to go and buy the guide.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God,
guides.
I remember buying those magazines. And then you'd have your little piece of paper and you'd write down cheat codes if they were in the magazines, or your friend, and it would always be like a tatty bit of paper.
Ooh. You see, going back
to... those were the days.
We're really showing our age now.
Yeah.
Going back to Code Veronica, though, you know what's mad to think is that, strictly speaking, without Code Veronica, we'd have never had Nemesis. Because, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people that are in the chat right now already know the story, but originally, Code Veronica was the 3rd installment in the Resident Evil franchise.
Yeah.
Now, the only reason that Nemesis actually became a game was because Sega got the rights to Code Veronica, hence why it was released on the Dreamcast. Now,
right, okay.
When Resident Evil 1 originally came around, apparently Capcom and Sony had a deal that there was going to be a trilogy of games on the PlayStation. So obviously Code Veronica,
right, okay,
which was supposed to be the 3rd installment. There's then a big fuss between Sony and Capcom about how the 3rd installment should be on PlayStation. But Sega already had the rights to Code Veronica, so that's why obviously Nemesis came around.
Yeah.
Without Code Veronica, like I say, strictly speaking, there wouldn't be an RE3 Nemesis, because it would have just been 1, 2 Code Veronica.
See, I knew Code Veronica was meant to be the 3rd installment, but I didn't realise that was how it went down, that Sega managed to get the rights to Code Veronica, and it was meant to be a trilogy with Sony. So that's really interesting, because I didn't know that. Like I said, I knew it was meant to be the 3rd installment, but I didn't realise that went down, and that's how we ended up with Nemesis, which incidentally is just about everybody's favourite Resident Evil game. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And I think that's what I was actually going to say when we're on about 3 make was, I think, like, because I know that if we get a Code Veronica remake, I'm going to be insanely harsh on it because it's my favourite. And I wonder if the reason 3 make got such harsh reviews was because Nemesis is the majority of people's favourite Resident Evil game. So naturally, you obviously are going to compare more, and you are going to be more harsh on your judgment.
And this is
I just wonder if that's...
Yeah, and this is what's sort of making me think twice as to whether I actually want a Code Veronica remake or not. Because, like, don't get me wrong, yeah, if they do make one and they do it well, I genuinely believe that could be a contender for Game of the Year.
Yeah.
But I would despise it, and I think it would probably take something away from the original for me as well, if they did it and did it wrong.
I was on about this yesterday because I was playing CVX yesterday, and I was talking to my chat about it, and I was saying, someone asked, do you want... it might be Mosferat who actually asked about, do I want a remake? And I was like, I do, but I'm like terrified that it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And I said, obviously, I can go back to the original, and you can go back to the original, and anybody can go back to the original. But I think I'm scared that they'll do it bad, and that will be some people's first experiences with it, and they will then therefore judge the original because the remake's not very good, and like that would like devastate me if they did it bad, because like I say, it's not just my favorite game in the franchise, it's my favorite game point blank. So if they're going to do it, this is where I'm mixed with, do I want one, yes or no? I think ultimately yes I do, but I don't, because I'm scared that it's going to be a disaster, basically. But I guess we can only wait and see if they do a good job, if they release it.
I like the over-the-shoulder aspect, but I reckon CVX would benefit more with fixed camera like RE1R. Yeah, I think I can agree with that. I think if they are going to remake it, I think it would be a lot more suited to the original Resident Evil remake as opposed to being in the RE engine.
But I don't think they would. Yeah, no? I don't think they would either. Because a lot of people, when they first played the original games or remaster, the number one complaint is always, I hate these tank controls and fixed camera angles. But that's actually something I really love about them. But I know a lot of people don't. I don't think they would go back to fixed camera angles. I do agree. I think it would benefit from it, but I just can't see them doing it.
See, the thing is, though, like,
personally,
a lot of people complain about the fixed camera angles in the original games, but I mean, that was one of the things that added to the horror aspect for me, was the fact that until you go round that corner, you've got no idea what's there. Like, you've got no idea what's waiting for you. And that, it wasn't actually until I started streaming, I saw so I was 28. At the age of 28, I was still not playing Resident Evil games after it got dark because I was so scared. I was still terrified. Now, obviously, I play them all the time, so they don't have an effect on me in the way they do. Don't get me wrong, if I play Resident Evil 7 in the dark, I still get pretty scared. But yeah, until I remember I was playing Remaster once on an evening, and I was still terrified because the survival horror, it's literally in the genre, but yeah, until 2 years ago, I wasn't able to watch them, to play them even, in the dark, because I was still scared. And one of the biggest things was not knowing what was about to come around that corner. Yeah.
Did I kill that zombie properly? Is the hunters about to come and get me? Is there a giant snake about to appear, or spider or whatever? I think one of the creepiest things in Remaster is when you walk through the double doors when you get to the residence. Is that what it's called? I always forget what that part of it's called, but you walk through the double doors and there's just a massive tarantula coming behind, down the door. I think that's terrifying. I'm not scared of spiders, so it doesn't bother me. But I know people like Emily are terrified. And I know she doesn't enjoy that bit too much. So I can imagine if you're scared of spiders, that's it's terrifying for me who isn't. So I imagine if you are scared of spiders, that's just got to be Like, ugh, like horrible.
Yeah, I can't imagine that would be something nice to witness in a video game if you are scared of spiders.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
now I do have a big Resident Evil related question, and I know
Okay.
for a fact that it's not going to be an easy one to answer, because I'm split between two different answers.
Right, okay.
Of everybody that you've seen play the franchise on Twitch,
Uh-huh.
if you had to say, and if you don't say me, then I'm going to kick off Royal. But
Right.
of everybody that you've watched play the franchise on Twitch, who would you name as the best Resident Evil player that you've watched in your time?
Oh, that's all I watch. Oh. Do you know, before I answer that, I will say I think one of the most underrated streamers is Living Disaster. I do not think he gets, and I know people, and I don't think for a second he actually does stream for views or anything like that, but I don't think he gets the attention he deserves. I don't know if you watch Living Disaster, but he literally runs all of the Resident Evil games on the hardest difficulty, no damage, and does them quick. If you can go into his stream at any time and he'll be playing Resident Evil HD Remaster, I can't think of what it's actually called, but the hardest difficulty, or he'll be playing Inferno. Is that the hardest on 3 Meg?
Yeah.
Or Village of Shadows, and like, you've played Village of Shadows. If it wasn't for all the upgraded weapons, I would never have gotten through that personally. And I think he is incredible, and I don't think he gets anywhere near the attention and gratification, is that the right word? That he deserves, because he is insane and he is so good at what he does. My favorite to watch, I don't actually know, because watching Soul Signal is so enjoyable.
Yeah.
And his community are the kindest, probably, that I'm a part of. In the sense of they don't troll. Soul, quite like everybody else's community, trolls the streamer. Obviously, Matt is incredible, and he does a lot of story playthrough, which is really enjoyable. Oh, I feel like I'm torn between you and Matt, and I'm not just saying that. I guess ultimately it would be you, because I've said to you previously, and I'm not kissing his arse in any way because I'm just on his podcast. I have actually said this to him, and I've said it to my boyfriend as well, that actually I enjoy watching Liam more than anybody. Because I think, not that I don't have a friendship with Soul or Holy Soul or Living or Matt or anybody, but I think me and Liam basically talk like every single day. Whether it's how are you doing, or you'll never guess what happened at work today, or I'm not like I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I at one point was going through a really, 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 really difficult time with my mental health, and getting a little bit emotional, which I didn't expect. And I wanted trigger warning, I guess, in case there's anybody who doesn't like hearing about bad mental health experiences. I don't really know how to word it. I wanted to end my life a few months. Sorry, I don't know. I'm getting emotional. And I messaged Liam, and I messaged Liam, and I just said, Liam, like, I'm not well. And my boyfriend was playing football at the time, so I lived with him, and he wasn't here. And I was just like, Liam, I'm not well. I don't know what to do. And I was just really honest with him, and he ultimately no, whatever. Like he ultimately saved. So why am I getting emotional? This is so stupid. Liam, no, whatever. Like ultimately saved my life that day. Because I can't remember whether we rang or we just texted all day, but he was there for me, and that's what I needed. And I'm obviously so insanely, as my friends, family, boyfriend, etc., thankful for that. But I think because I'm friends with you on like a different kind of level than Matt and Soul and Holy Soul or whoever, I think that's why I enjoy, because we have that friendship and we have that banter, but we also have that personal connection. And you often play my favourite game, CVX, so that helps. But yeah, sorry, I don't know why I got emotional there, but to answer your question, you.
Well, see, obviously, I'll touch on that one myself in a minute or two.
Sorry, guys.
For me, no, listen, don't apologise. I mean, for me, there's a lot of people that you could mention in terms of Resident Evil ability. I mean, if you're going to talk about like prime Resident Evil players, you have to name the likes of Holy Soul, especially when it comes to RE3. Like, I mean, that man does things on that game that just shouldn't even be possible. You've got Pyramid K, who 2 and 3. I'd probably say 3 original is between Pyramid K and Holy Soul. You've then got Pezzy for. I mean, if you think that you're going to play RE0 or RE Remaster, like, he's the bar. Like, that's what you want to wave at. And anybody that knows those two games, they will tell you when it comes to 0 and Remaster, Pez is the GOAT. Like, there's just no getting near it. But for me personally, and like what you just kind of said, like, I'm not just saying it because he's a mate of mine. You have to mention that.
Yeah.
Purely because of his diversity with Resident Evil runs. Like, don't think there's a Resident Evil game that I've not seen Matt speedrun and speedrun well.
Yeah.
I mean, I class myself as a decent runner. If you take RE3 OG and Code Veronica out of the equation, then he'd probably serve me on like any other. Hence, I've raced him 4 times, he's beat me 4 times. Including on 3 original. Although I've got a lot better at it since the last time. So, where you at, big boy? Let's go. But for me, I'd have to say Soul Signal, just purely because I think he's, and I've said this several times, I've said this to him as well, I think he's the most methodical Resident Evil player that I have ever watched in my life. I mean, the guy's beaten Code Veronica, no damage.
Oh God, I know.
How?
Yeah.
Like, that shouldn't be possible, but the man found a way to do it. Some of the no damage runs that I've seen him do, I think the one that he played out the most from what I saw, I want to say was probably Village on hardcore, because he was at that for quite some time, wasn't he?
Yeah. Oh, he. I think it was over a year. He was trying to get Village, and he's not done Village of Shadows yet. It was hardcore or whatever the one just below Village of Shadows was, but I think it took him over a year to get it. I think that was his longest, which you would think actually CVX. But I remember he lost a run once to do you know any players, Chris, and you go where the big ant's nest is. One of the ants ruined the run from him. Or he got to the end so many times and Alexa would just go split, and that was damage and game over. So you would think, I think CVX is probably the hardest. But ultimately, yeah, I think it took him over a year. I could be wrong with that, but took him a very long time.
Yeah, because I remember it used to be my
to get it.
Well, that used to be one of my Sunday rituals. Get up in the morning, 10 o'clock, because you guarantee regular as clockwork, Sunday morning, 10 o'clock, Soul Signal has just gone live.
Yeah.
And every Sunday for about 2 months, maybe 2.5 months, I'd be there, 10 o'clock, ready to watch. And there was this one particular Sunday, I think I had Isaac, and I was dropping him off early. I was doing something during the day, I can't remember what it was, but I wasn't able to sit and watch it like I normally would have done. And that was the day that he got it, and I was gutted. Because
what was it? Was this Village?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is? I missed that stream as well, and I'd watched them like all pretty much, and definitely as regular as clockwork around that time, like you say, you know, your Saturdays and your Sundays, it would be 10 a.m. Soul Signal's gone live, and I can't remember why. I don't know. Was I at football or something? I can't remember. I was somewhere and I couldn't watch it, and suddenly his Discord's going crazy, and I like was looking at my phone like, huh? And I went on, and sure enough, he was like, "I got it," and I was like, "Oh!" Like, obviously, so happy for him, but devastated that I'd missed him, because it was months. Like, at one point, he wasn't shaven, and he said, "I'm not shaving until I get this," and it was like a decent beard. He had going on, bless him. And maybe it was less than a year, because it came out in May. And I remember around Christmas time, we were saying to him, "Are you going to dye it white and be Father Christmas," basically. Yeah, bless him. That was a rough one for him. But I agree. I like, you ultimately are my favourite for the reasons I've just mentioned. But Matt, Soul Signal, Holy are all up there, and no doubt I'm missing someone when I'm saying this. Rebel, when Rebel used to play Resident Evil, he doesn't anymore. I loved watching him. Obviously, things have changed for both of us a lot over the last couple of years. Excuse me, sorry, but you know, when pandemic was happening, we were in lockdown and stuff, and I don't know about yourself, but I was furloughed, so I literally had nothing to do. You could stay up until 5 a.m. watching someone that lived in New York or something playing a game.
Yeah.
And you know, now there's sometimes I log on and put Twitch on at like 6:30 when I get up for work, and there'll be people that I used to watch during the night on, and I'd be like, "Oh, come on," and they'll be like, "Oh, we're just going off now," and it's just like, oh,
yeah.
Like, I remember when I used to be able to stay and watch you, and that definitely makes me sad. I miss that part of lockdown, being able to play games and watch people. It's stupid to clock in and not matter. But yeah, when Rebel used to do it, we used to play. I used to really enjoy watching Rebel, and he was really good at it as well. He knew the games inside out, as many of us do. But yeah, I think you're right. Soul Signal and Matt, you can't. I mean, I've never watched Pessy. I've never watched. Who was the other one that you mentioned?
Pyramid K.
Pyramid K. Yeah, I've never watched Pyramid either. And the only reason I've not watched them is because I know Matt and Bo Soul Signal are big in the community, but I'm not going to name names. But I went into a bigger stream. It wasn't either of them two. To a bigger streamer's stream, believe it or not, and I was like chatting, and I was just completely ignored. And I completely 100% understand. I don't have a big audience when I go live. And I sometimes miss messages. So I completely understand when you've got 100 people or whatever watching you, that it's going to be harder. And especially if you're speedrun, which this particular streamer was. And I think they said hi. And it was kind of like they didn't want me there. And the entire chat ignored me the entire time. And I just thought, okay. And I stayed there for about half an hour. And I was like, oh, okay, I feel very uncomfortable. Like, I feel like I'm not wanted within this community. So I went away and they popped up again as a suggested. I didn't follow them at any point. And I went back in and it was exactly the same. And that really put me off ever wanting to go into these big streamers. Like the fact that I ever went into, because Soul Signal, I think when he was playing CVX had over 100. And his was a rarity. Like, as in he's the only one outside this other streamer that I've ever done it with. Because I think when I met Matt, if he was on the viewers he's on now, I don't think I'd have ever bothered. But obviously I've watched Matt and I've got that friendship with Matt. And Matt is, I want to point out, I don't think Matt is in any way ignorant or whatever to anybody new. I think he's insanely welcoming, as is his community. But I think that put me off wanting to watch Pyramid K or anything because I'd had such a bad experience is the wrong way to put it, but I had a negative experience and I just thought, oh, well, if I'm not wanted, then I'm not going to bother kind of thing. So that's why I've kind of avoided, like Lucy Lover, I avoided speaking in Lucy Lover's chat for ages. And I love him. I think he's hilarious. I think he's brilliant and he's so good at what he does. But again, it took me ages, and Nick's Issues, who actually hasn't streamed in a really long time, probably about in a year now, again, it took me ages. Like, I'm like, that one experience, and I shouldn't let it, but that one experience is like really made me scared. Scared's the wrong word, but like, I don't know, like it just kind of really put me off wanting to try if people are going to act like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like you
which
say,
is probably a bit unfair.
Well, I can understand that, and like I said, that's one of the things that I like about, you know, people like Matt, Soul, Lucy, you know, the people that they can have a couple of hundred people there, but all right, maybe not so often if they're speedrunning. I know obviously Soul doesn't speedrun as often as what Lucy and Matt do, but I've never been in one of Lucy's streams or one of Matt's streams or one of Soul's streams who, you know, are regularly getting 3 figures at minimum these days.
Yeah, 100% every single stream, yeah.
And I've never in any of them felt unwelcome. Like, you know, you can come in and say hello. Yeah, like you say, you know, obviously, especially if chat's popping, there's going to be missed messages. Right? We all know that. But the 3 of them make a conscious effort to make everybody feel welcome, and they
always will apologize as well if they've which they don't have to do, because, you know, all 3 of them, their chats are pretty, I think Lucy's is less active, but I think that's because he's like can get sometimes distracted by chat. So I know I make a conscious effort that if he's just started a run or if he's in between runs, that's when I'll like send my messages if I'm talking to people in chat, then obviously I will otherwise, but I try and avoid like making them think is probably the wrong way to put it, but making them think about anything other than what he's doing there and then.
Yeah.
But all 3 of them are so gracious and so kind and welcoming, and you know that they appreciate you being there, and it's not you're not another number on the view list or on their sub list if you do sub to them or whatever. They actually, you know, I actually would happily say I'm friends with not necessarily Lucy, but Soul and definitely Matt. I would 100% say I have a friendship there with them. Not anything against Lucy in any kind of way, but just like I've not chatted with him as much as the other 2 kind of thing. But they make everybody, I think, feel wanted and welcome there, if I'm being honest.
Well, just whatever you do, don't take Matt to a Wetherspoons. Running joke that we've got. Obviously, I've been to Insomnia with Matt a couple of times now. And we've been in the Wetherspoons in the NEC, and from the minute he arrives, oh, it's so dear in here. It's a Weatherspoons. It shouldn't be this dear. Oh, it's so dear. It's like, Matt, come on, shut up. I told you I can't compliment him without saying something bad.
I was actually on about earlier
I'm
about how cheap
programmed.
Weatherspoons is, to be fair.
I
Because
mean,
we were at a pub after the football, and I said, because my boyfriend plays football on a Sunday league football, and we go to the pub afterwards. I never actually ever drink, but he got a Guinness and I got a cup of tea. And he was like, "Oh, he didn't even charge me for the cup of tea." And I was like, "It's £5.80 for a pint of Guinness. Are you joking?" And then we're on about how like expensive pubs are and how spoons are so much cheaper and blah blah blah.
so hold on, let me get this right. Alex is a Guinness man.
Yeah,
So
I like Guinness.
if we could just
And he likes pool.
I mean, if we could just fast forward the next 4 to 5 weeks, then that'd be great.
Yeah, I asked him yesterday when we were playing Criplash. I was like, because we've never played pool. I was like, even though I've known him for over 5 years, I was like, "Do you like pool?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Liam likes pool." So I was thinking, I have no idea around here where you can play pool, like, but I was thinking at some point you could have a game of pool because I know how much you enjoy pool.
Since you
But we'll
telling me
make
that
sure
I'm,
we've got some Guinness in for you as well when you come down.
So does this mean I'm going to have to bring the cue with me and teach the boy a lesson?
You might have to. He doesn't have a queue, so. But yeah.
Do you know, I actually remember playing Matt for the first time.
Who won? Who won that game?
I won the first one, and then Matt won the following two.
He won. Oh, right, okay.
But yeah, we went to Resort World, which is like a 5-minute walk from the NEC. It's like this big complex. There's like a bowling alley, a few different eateries, a few bars, things like that. I don't think we've gone over there for the game of pool specifically. I think we just went over there just to go and do something different, go and have a walk around and whatnot. And then obviously we sees this bowling alley. I've always said to Matt, "Oh, I'll destroy you on a pool table."
Yeah, that's something you've always, yeah.
And obviously the pool tables were there, so we're like, "Come on, let's nip in and have a game." And I'll give him his due. He's a better player than what I would have thought. However, my excuse, and I stand by this, is they were American tables. Right, get me on an English table. I will serve him for breakfast.
They were a what table?
American.
I thought you said a pelican. I said, what the hell's a pelican table?
That'd be a new one.
Yeah, that would be a weird one as well.
So, obviously, we sort of touched on this, touched on it a little bit earlier on, and something that obviously I've been speaking about an awful lot on the channel recently, is obviously mental health and the struggles that people can have. Sometimes, me personally, I don't think that people necessarily understand just how much streaming can have an impact on your mental health. And I mean, don't get me wrong, when it's good, it's fantastic. Like, it's absolutely brilliant. You know, there's going to be those times where, you know, you have a particularly bad stream and it really affects you. And I think sometimes the mistake that people make is that they just think, oh, it's just somebody that's sat playing a computer game. And
it's a lot of work.
It is. And you know, without seeming like I'm trying to blow smoke up our asses or anything like that, you know, at the end of the day, it's, yeah, all right, predominantly we sat here chatting away to people playing video games. But in essence, what we're doing is we're inviting people from all over the world into our lives. You know? And don't get me wrong, again, you know, a lot of the time there's a difference between, you know, the person that you see on the camera as opposed to that person specifically. Again, that's something that Matt does really well. Matt as a bloke and Matt as a streamer, I wouldn't say are two completely different people, but you can tell the difference. You know, you can tell that he sort of has that barrier in place, which I think sometimes is quite important. Something that sometimes I fail to do. I don't personally believe that me as a streamer versus me as a person is any different at all. And obviously, you've seen me over the years. I won't think twice about sitting here talking about the struggles that I've faced, or what I've been through with my son, etc., etc. And I think the reason that I do that is just purely because, like, I want to be sure that anybody that's in my channel or in my community, if they feel that they've got something going on or they're facing some kind of struggle, that number one, they know that they're not on their own, and number two, they know that they can come and speak to me. Like, just even if it is just a little message to say, "Oh, look, Liam, I'm not doing too well. Can I just have a chat with you?" Like, yeah, of course you can, no problem. And I'll sit there and I'll stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning listening to somebody if I have to. I suppose my question on that side of things, because obviously we both know, because of the personal connection that we've got, we both know that we've both been through some really difficult times.
Yeah.
So, in the days where you're like that, well, apart from coming speaking to me and sitting there chin wagging for I don't know how long,
Yeah.
what's your sort of go-to coping mechanism when you get into that sort of darkness?
I think talking, whether that is to my auntie works for a mental health charity, so she's seen and heard a lot kind of thing. Whether that's speaking to you, whether that's speaking to my best friend Laura, whether that's speaking to my boyfriend. I don't particularly go to my parents, and that's not because my parents aren't supportive, because I am so unbelievably lucky that I have such supportive people around me, whether it's friends, family, whatever. But I live 300 miles away from my parents, and the first thing my mum always says if something goes wrong is, "Do you want to move back home? Do you want to move back home?" And I'm always like, "No, mum, it's fine." But I don't want to worry them.
Yeah.
Even if I do feel like I'm at the end of anything I can possibly take, I don't like. I will be honest with them afterwards. There has been times when I've ended up in hospital, and I've ended up telling them, or there's other things where I haven't really spoken too much about this, if at all, on Twitch. But I have been. I'm pretty sure you know about this, but I personally have been sexually assaulted 3 times. Different stages throughout my life. One time was during the pandemic, and that really affected me. And I didn't know who to turn to, because ultimately the police got involved. So my mum did end up finding out, as did my dad. My parents aren't together. But they obviously came to my mum's house about it. So I think I find it the best thing for me is to speak to people who I'm not with, apart from my boyfriend, who was obviously with me 24/7 because we live together. But I think I find it easy to speak to you because you're not going to turn up on my doorstep. Or if I speak to my auntie, she's not going to, because you're so far away. And when I was sexually assaulted during the pandemic, obviously I was up north. So rather than contact my auntie, who was 2 minutes away, who I would usually go to, I contacted my friend who was in London. Because I think I need also some kind of distance. Because I don't like being a bother. And I know exactly what you're going to say, what everyone else is going to say, what everyone else says to me when I say this. You're not a bother. We want to help you. I know that. I genuinely know that. But I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but when I'm going through anxiety or depression or whatever, I feel like I'm a burden. And that sometimes can really, really spiral. And I think that if I turn around to my friend who's around the corner and go, I'm feeling like this, they will take their time. I know they will take their time to come over and make sure I'm okay. And that therefore I feel like I'm burdening them by them having to do, not that they have to do that, but them feeling like they have to do that.
Yeah.
Whilst if I speak to someone who's 300 miles away, or however far there is between me and you, you're not going to feel like oh, well, I'll pop around and see her, which I appreciate. Of course, I appreciate that, but you're not just around the corner, so you can't just pop in and make sure I'm okay, kind of thing. Therefore, I obviously do feel like I'm burdening you when I talk to you about it, but I don't feel I'm burdening you as much as somebody who would, as a result, come and check on me, if that makes sense. So I think my core mechanism is keeping people at a distance, but still talking about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, my boyfriend lives with me, therefore he's my biggest outlet, because I mean, you should always be honest in your relationships about how you're feeling and whatnot. But also, I don't want him ever feeling like he's upset me or put me in a, you know, like I had some issues with work last week and I was in a really low spot with it. And like I kept like snapping at him, and I was like, I just want you to know, like, it's not you kind of thing. It's work, blah blah blah, whatever. But I think talking is what. And I know some people that are like, I never want to talk about it, which is fine. But personally, I think talking about it, but still keeping people at a distance, is the best way I personally cope with it. Or putting something that you can kind of just zone out to, you know, like Friends, which you've watched 1,000 times, or Derry Girls is my particular go-to, where both fantastic shows, but where you don't really need to concentrate on them.
Yeah.
You can just enjoy them and get absorbed in them, but you don't like need to, you know, it's not like Criminal Minds. I don't know, I can't think of a TV show, but where you need to like concentrate on what you're watching. I think those are probably my two main coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Personally.
Going back to what you said before about, you know, never wanting to feel like you're burdening somebody, and you know that everybody's going to say that you're not a burden and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, that's not something that I could necessarily, I want to say criticise, for lack of a better word. Not that I would criticise, but you know, that's the only thing that I can sort of think to use. Because you yourself know, you know, how many times now has there been conversations that we've had and you've been like, Liam, is everything all right? And you know for the fact that there isn't.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, everything's not all right. And I've been like, no, I'm fine. Purely for the same thing, you know. And I think this is something that I'm sort of getting better with, because like I was always of the same sort of mentality, like, you know, my problems are my problems. You know, I don't want to instill them onto somebody else. You know, I don't want to pass my problems on to somebody else. So
sorry to interrupt, but in my head as well, I'm like, what if they're going through something and they don't want to talk about it, and now I'm putting, like, you know, maybe they're feeling similar, and then I'm putting that on top of them as well when they're feeling a similar way, kind of thing. And what if I make that worse for them? And
yeah,
that's where my mind goes to anyway sometimes.
But see, what I'm now getting better with, what I'm starting to learn, is that if anything, by not having that conversation, let's for example say that I'm in a really difficult place, and you know that, and you're trying to get me to speak about it, and I just won't. I've then found that ultimately, if you don't address the issue, or you don't talk about the issue, and you allow it to keep building up and keep building that pressure on you, it gets to a point where ultimately you actually become more of a burden because of what that then ultimately does to you, as opposed to, you know, if you would have just had that conversation and just said, yeah, do you know what, actually, no, I'm not feeling too great, you know, I've got this going on, I've got that going on. And even if it's something really simple, like, you know, you've had a rough day in work and it's really had a knock on you, or something like that, you know, just by having that conversation, it, for me, ultimately, it can help an awful lot. And again, you know, the amount of times that you and I have spoke when I've not been feeling too great, and obviously you'll know that there's been times where me and you have spoken, I've been on the verge of tears, and within half an hour, I'm pissing myself laughing because
Yeah.
you've said something that has just really tickled me, or we spoke about what we need to speak about, and then sort of broke the mood down, kind of thing. And I've then come off that phone call feeling so much better than what I did before going into it. So
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Talking about issues like that is something that is really important, and it can be difficult to do. I think we both understand that.
Yeah.
But I think once you sort of break that barrier, once you sort of make that leap, so to speak, it can become a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
And sort of touching on that, like, and I know I'm starting to ramble a little bit now, but like, honestly, guys, I can't stress enough that if there is anybody that's watching right now, or watches this back on YouTube in a couple of weeks when it goes onto YouTube.
Going on YouTube?
Yeah, I've been. Well, so the first episode I've put on YouTube today, and then
Oh,
what I'm
right,
gonna do
okay.
is every week, obviously, I'll have somebody on the Sunday, but then the person that was on a couple of weeks prior, that one will go onto YouTube.
Right, okay.
I did mean to do them like pretty much straight away, but work and time and whatnot, I've just not had the time to, so I've kind of felt behind with it. But if there is anybody watching live or watching it back, if you are going through anything and you feel like you've got things on your mind and you don't particularly know what to do with it, whoever it is, if it's a close friend, a family member, I mean, for Christ's sake, if it's me, like, just speak to somebody. Just don't face things on your own, because ultimately,
Yeah.
from my own personal experience, when I did that, ultimately that can become very self-destructive.
Yeah. And obviously I understand your community, but it's exactly the same for me. I know obviously we have a lot of mutual friends and whatnot. It's exactly the same for me. If you ever, and I mean ever, need to talk about something, I would much rather hear your problem than hear you're no longer with us.
Yeah,
That's how I see it.
and do you
I
know
would
what?
1,000 times over. I'd rather hear you talk about this one problem 1,000,000 times over before I ever, ever, ever hear that you're no longer with us. So please, whoever, like Liam said, I just want to echo that. Whether it's me, whether it's him, whether it's a parent, a sibling, an aunt, an uncle, a friend, a stranger, there's so many helplines out there. And we all know in the UK, it might be everywhere else in the world, I'm not sure. But I know in the UK it's very strained. But there is so many people out there who want you around and want to listen to what you have to say. You are important and you so unbelievably deserve your place on this earth. Please, I'm begging you, if you feel in any way, shape, or form like you don't belong on this planet, ignore yourself saying that, because you fucking do, and speak to somebody, whether it's me, Liam, whoever, because we want you here. We want you around, and I promise that with all I have. Please speak to somebody. Genuinely.
So to get a little bit lighter, so to speak, let's and I never want to picture a world where this actually happens, but let's, for argument's sake, say that Resident Evil doesn't exist. What would be your go-to franchise?
So my second favorite game is actually Dead Island, but there's only 2 games of that. So I'd probably say Fallout. I've been thinking a lot about Fallout 3 and how much I want to play Fallout 3 again. After that, I would. both Aaron and Longthorn have put me in a sticky situation because I would either be Final Fantasy or Silent Hill after that as well.
Yeah, for me, without any shadow, Final Fantasy. Like,
yeah,
I
thought that would be the case.
Well, camera seems to be going out of focus there. Well, you were there, my first ever 24-hour, when I did 24 hours of Final Fantasy X. How I managed to do that, I still to this day have no idea.
I don't know how you did that either, because sometimes I'm playing a game and I'm struggling playing a game for a couple of hours. Never mind one game for 24 hours. At least if you do a marathon, you can like mix it up a little bit, but to play the same game, like, all power to you, man.
See, the thing is, and I think that's one of the things that I like the most about Final Fantasy, and that's why I went with Final Fantasy X for my first 24-hour, because obviously at the time I was console, so if I was going to change the game, it would have meant ending the stream and then rebooting it. Whereas,
of course, yeah.
Whereas with 10,
when you were just a tiny circle in the bottom corner.
Oh Christ, I remember those days. But yeah, like you can easily get 24 hours worth of content out of a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
10 is
any of them, I'd say as well. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. 10 is a great game. It's probably the most user-friendly one. I think my favourite one in the franchise, though, and it's one that gets a lot of hate, but it's got to be number 8. I think mainly because it was the first one that I played.
7 was the first one I played, and I think that's why it's my favourite.
See,
followed by 10.
For years, I didn't play 7 because I'd got into Final Fantasy, and everyone kept telling me about 7, and they're like, "Oh, you need to play. It's fantastic. It's this. It's that," and I just didn't believe the hype. I thought this game has been built up so much to me now that ultimately I'm going to end up disappointed because it's not going to live up to the hype that everybody has built it to be.
Yeah.
And then eventually I thought, right, do you know what? I've waited long enough. Let's give it a go. Wow, I was not disappointed. Not by a long shot. I'd go as far as to say probably the best story of a video game that I've ever played. I'm not going to say what it is in case there's people in the chat that haven't yet played it. I mean, it was out in the 90s, so if you've not already played it, you're probably never going to.
But you should.
Definitely. But for me, it had one of the biggest plot twists. I'd say the biggest plot twist since Wesker turning on RBD and RE1. Which, let's be honest, at the time, when you were playing through RE1 for the first time, I think the people that would have been able to see that coming were few and far between.
Yeah.
I know for the fact I did.
Everyone thought it was Barry.
Mm.
I remember, I think Emily was playing through it with, and our dad was watching, and I'm pretty sure he was like, "Barry's a bad guy." In HD Remaster, where you get the option whether or not to kill him, he was like, "You've got to kill him. He's a bad guy." And then when he wasn't, he was like, "Oh, never mind." I love a good plot twist, though.
Yeah, I think it's this one in particular with 7. It was just so out of nowhere. Like there was no build up to it. There was no forewarning. It was just like, bam! Wow, where the fuck did that come from? Like, and it's really difficult to talk about it without giving it away.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
All I'll say, guys, is end of disc 1. That's all I'll say.
To be fair, that means that you don't have to play very far into it, because given there's like, how many discs? 6, 7 discs?
No, there's only 3.
There's only 3? Which one is it that I'm thinking of where there's like a load of discs? Or have I just built that up in my head?
7
Final
was
Fantasy
3 discs. 8 was 4. I can't remember if 9 was 4 or 3.
Oh, in
I
my
won't say
head,
that
there
much
was
so.
like 7 discs.
Oh, you're going back to the days of like the Amiga, when you had games over like, and Christ, I really am showing my age now. But you had games that were over like 12, 13, 3/4 inch floppy disks.
Oh God, a floppy disk. Oh God, that's really throwing it back. Floppy disks.
Probably a good job that we're not playing Jackbox right now, speaking of floppy disks.
That's going to be my answer next time. Leaves floppy disk. I had a box of floppy disk. Oh my God, Longthorn.
Yeah, we don't want to know about floppy in your bad long phone. I know what you're like, you dirty boy. Right. I am going to have to start wrapping things up.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because I have got to be in work in the morning and I really don't want to be. But that being said, go to work tomorrow, payday on Tuesday, so that's not too bad.
Ah, way.
But before we do go, is there anybody in particular that you want to give a shout out to, or anything coming up on your channel that you want to give a shout out to?
Obviously, everyone we've spoken about. Soul Signal, Matt, Lemon Disaster absolutely deserves more recognition than what he gets. Obviously, my cousin Emily. It would be unfair if I didn't mention her, even though she hasn't streamed, I think, since her birthday in October. But when she does stream, they're really enjoyable. Holy Soul. Is there anybody else I feel like there should be? And my mind's got blank.
Yeah, I kind of put you on the spot a bit there, didn't I?
Yeah, I wish you'd prepared me for that one. I think that's everybody. But I think out of everyone that I've spoken about, definitely people should check out. Master Dean is another one. Mr. Moore is another one.
This is cheating now. Now she's just going to go through the chat.
Right, who's watching? Obviously everyone we've spoken about, but Living Disaster deserves more recognition for what he does. So I would, if I had to choose one person, I would say Living Disaster.
Is it?
Check him out.
Is it literally just Living Disaster as that?
I think it might have 2 R's on disaster. Oh,
well, in that case, you can look for his username and you.
I'm accidentally typing in tit when I'm trying to find. Yeah, Living Disaster. 2 R's on the end. It should be like a little Jill emote. That is his profile picture.
Like that.
But he absolutely deserves more recognition for what he does. Yeah, his last stream was him doing Real Survivor knife only, no damage.
I can hear a game.
It shows you how hardcore he goes. But yeah, he would be who I would shout out if I had to shout out one person.
Fair enough. Right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it's about time to be wrapping up. If you don't already, please do go and follow Amber. Let me post it once again. Have I got the switch on it? Yeah, I have. As I said at the start of the stream, you know, Amber's been one of my closest friends on this platform now, basically since day one. You could basically say we came through Twitch together, almost, I suppose.
100%, yeah.
All right. But when am I next going to be on now? Possibly during the week. I'm not going to 100% commit to it, just purely because of my working hours. I unfortunately now during the week just can't commit to like weekdays anymore. I'm probably going to say there will be one day this week that I will go live. I'm just not entirely sure when that's going to be. But Amber, I just want to say a massive, massive thank you for coming on. I know you were a bit nervous about it and you were
terrified. So thank you everyone for being so nice.
No, but honestly, it's been fantastic having you on.
Thank you.
And I'm sure everybody in chat will agree with me. and if you don't, then you'll get unsolicited dick pictures. So you better I'd agree. But yeah, thank you very much for coming.
You're more than welcome.
Coming watching. Again, go and check out. Am I right in saying that you're live tomorrow?
Yeah, director's cut tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got what time?
6 p.m. GMT.
There you go, guys. If you're not there, then you're not even doing Twitch right. You're failing at Twitch if you're not there at 6 o'clock tomorrow. However, without me waffling on absolute nonsense for too much longer, let's have a look and see who is live to throw a raid over to. In fact, you know what, Amber? I'm going to let you pick somebody.
Oh, God.
Again, putting you on the spot.
Who is live? Quite a few. I'm going to say Tom.
Oh, it's Tom.
I love Tom. Of course, Tom. Yeah, shout out to Tom as well. I love Tom. And Dr. Best.
Right. I didn't even notice Tom on.
I don't think he's been on for very long, to be fair.
Do you know what, though? I've just had a quick look. I was about to say I could hazard a guess that he's playing RE1 Remake, which is always a good shout when it's Tom, because the guy...
Yeah.
He loves that game. And I'll give him his due. He's fucking damn good at it as well, actually.
Yeah, he is.
In fact, I'm sure he's in the top 5 in the world now. Could be wrong on that. We'll have to ask him.
Is he 4th? I feel like he's 4th now.
I think so, yeah. Well, we'll have to ask him when we arrive.
2nd, Longthorn says.
Oh, wow. Well, let's all go and share the love with him then, guys. But yeah, again, thank you all so much for tuning in. We will be live at some point during the week, if not the weekend. Next week we have got Just Incredible coming on, who again is someone that I'm particularly quite close with on the stream. On the platform. We always have a good laugh together. So please do make sure to tune in for that. Please come and hit that follow button for Tom if you don't do already, and I will catch up with you all next time. Take care, guys.